Hey everyone, welcome back to Voyage.
Sorry.
Jacob's going to be talking about teaching English in France, and Sarah is here for some good vibes. How we're going to format this is the first half of the video, I'm going to be asking Jacob some questions about how he started teaching English in France, and the second half of the video we're going to talk a bit about just living in France in general.
My experience.
Culture shocks, things like that.
No pressure.
Don't worry, I'll cut everything that's weird.
There's like this giant hole in the video from Sarah.
First question that I've got is, how did you get the opportunity to start teaching English in France?
So I first learned about this opportunity when I was in university, when I was in undergrad back in the States. I was a French major when I was back at the States, and many people who graduated from the French program in my university, they went on to do this program, which I'm doing now, which is called the TAPIF program. TAPIF, which stands for the Teaching Apprentice Program in France. Very straightforward. So basically, it's a partnership between the American government and the French government to bring over native speakers of English into different French schools, whether it's primary schools, middle schools, or high schools, in order to get basically native exposure for the students who are in the schools. The program is slightly different for people depending on what country they're from, but that's basically how I got the opportunity. Is I was in university, I learned about that program, it sparked my interest, and I applied, and then here I am today.
There you go. Do you have to be studying French to be able to do this program?
No. So you do not necessarily need to be studying French or a French learner to be doing this program. It was sort of like just a natural step for me because I was already in that French kind of mindset when this opportunity.
French mindset, huh?
Yeah, when this
already eating baguettes.
Yeah, already eating baguettes and already eating cheese all the time. But so like I was already kind of like doing the French stuff, and I was looking for more ways to improve my French, to get over and working and experiencing France. So you don't need to be a French student, but it definitely is sort of like a logical
next step for sure. Do you have to speak French to be able to do this?
Do you have to speak French to be able to do this? No. So you
obviously
do not.
It helps, but...
Yeah, obviously it helps. So you do not necessarily need to be, like, your level doesn't need to be at a certain point or anything like that in order to do this program. However, it does really help if you have a good French background, because you're going to be living and working in a French-speaking country and interacting with French people on a daily basis. They do ask for basically like a review of your French language. So like when I was applying for the program, I did have to have a teacher basically write me a letter that evaluated my French level.
So did you didn't have to do a test or anything? But
I didn't have to do a test. There was no test or anything, but they definitely asked, like, do you have French experience? Can someone attest to your level to kind of figure it out?
And what's the level? Like, you have to be at least basic or intermediate?
There's no like specific level, but they want to know kind of like where your level is at.
And his French is really good. Everyone thinks that he's a French native.
It can sometimes get me into problems when like you can speak French, or like you can sound like you really speak French,
but you don't have all the vocabulary,
right?
So you just sound like a stupid French person.
You just sound like a stupid, like an idiot.
You do in English too.
Yeah, so people think you understand, and you're like, shut up.
They can hear you.
Oh, you want him to speak French right
yes.
now?
Non, mais s'il vous plaît,
no.
Je veux pas.
So he was like.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah, go for it.
Are there any other ways to go like teaching French?
Teaching English in France?
Ways to go teaching English in France?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously the program I'm doing, TAPIF, is just like one of many different programs that exist. The benefit about the TAPIF program, I will say, just to kind of like shamelessly plug it, is that like it is a paid job. It's a paid position. Some of the other programs that exist actually are programs, not necessarily slave labor, but like you actually have to like pay to play, basically. You have to pay to participate in these programs. So it's kind of nice that like I get paid to do this versus me paying another
Yeah.
private company to have this opportunity to
Yeah.
teach
Okay.
English.
Talk a little bit about your visa type. Did you have to get a working holiday visa, or is this something else?
Yes, so you do need a worker's visa essentially to do this sort of program in order to be enrolled in the healthcare system, to be formally employed by the French government, all that jazz. So you do technically need to have a worker's visa. The nice thing about TAPIF program is that they do sponsor the visa. So you get all the information that you need in order to go online and to fill out all the visa paperwork and stuff like that for the worker's visa. And then you do have to have an appointment to go
Right.
to a visa consulate in order to have an interview, to submit all your documentation, all that, in order to receive your visa. So for me, that entailed booking an appointment online after I filled out all my documents. And then I actually traveled to Chicago in the US. That was my closest appointment center to have the interview.
When you say appointment center, is it like a French embassy or is it something else?
So basically it is sort of like the French embassy.
More about the requirements, right? So
Sure.
do you have to have a certain education level, like you've finished university, college, or for example, do you have to have some kind of certificate in teaching
Yeah.
or something like that?
Absolutely. So you don't necessarily need to have a certificate for teaching or anything like that. I know in my experience, I do have that certification, so that really helps me in my day-to-day work. Requirements, honestly, they differ between countries and, where you're coming from and how you're doing this program. For the American side, we are required to be college graduates, so we need to have finished university. So I would say education level for us is basically university. However, I do have some friends, some colleagues in this program who are from the UK, and their requirements are different. They don't necessarily need to have finished university.
Okay.
A lot of them are actually doing this program as a part of their study abroad requirements for their language. So that's kind of cool, seeing like the differences between that. But as for requirements, for the most part for me, it's you have to have finished university. And then for the TAPIF program, there is an age requirement. It's actually, you can't be older than, I think it's around 30 or
There's
33.
an age like limit.
Wow.
There's
above.
an age limit. Yeah, absolutely. So there's a maximum age for this
Interesting.
program. I think it's around 30, 33 years old. Don't quote me on that. You'd have to look that up to make sure.
Do you get to choose where you go, or did you choose one?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, actually.
Thank you.
Questions, yeah.
Well, yeah, because there's different basically regions, academic regions all around France. So basically on the application, when you fill it out, what they ask you to choose your top 3 places. And basically you choose like a place from Department A, from Department B, Department C. And these places could be all throughout France. So you pick your top 3 places. And they do their best to accommodate your needs, your desires,
Okay.
things like that.
But you didn't get any of your choices, right?
Actually, I did.
You did?
So
You've chosen?
so I
She's in
chose.
shock. She's like, you chose this place. No,
I know. So right, like who would choose this area?
We love La Normandie.
We absolutely do. We stan the Normandy region. It's got my heart, and I'm very happy to be here. But honestly, anywhere that you'll end up, you'll be happy.
will be good. Yeah.
I think.
Paris was not your first choice.
No, Paris was not my first choice. For those of you who know France very well, you know that there's more to France than just Paris. And I've already spent a decent amount of time in Paris, so I kind of wanted to get out of my box, to explore different regions.
And it's expensive, I guess, right?
And it can be very expensive because like you are on a very, I'll say, a modest salary. You're not going to be making tons of money doing this program, just to be transparent. So I knew that being in Paris, you are going to be paying a little bit more just because it's a really big city.
The students that you're actually teaching, how old are they? And like, do they already have to have a certain level of English?
Good question. So I'm in collège, so I'm in middle school, basically.
Right.
The French middle school, collège. And my students are, for the most part, they're between the ages of 11 and 14 years old. They do all have prior
English.
experience or exposure to English because the French educational system, they start their English classes at the primary age.
You wouldn't have guessed.
I know, you wouldn't have guessed, you know.
And you like get given the curriculum of what you're going to teach anyway.
For the most part. And what's really nice is that you're working with a team of English teachers who are at the school. So we're working together on things. It's not like they throw you into the deep end and they're like, okay, good luck. You've got 5 classes to teach today. Figure it out.
And you're on like contracts?
Yes. Yeah, so it's a work contract. So basically, it's a work contract for roughly 7 months, I would say, give or take.
You can get that renewed, like your contract?
And you can get it renewed. So with this program, with the TAPIF program, I'm not sure about all nationalities, but for Americans specifically, I know that we have a max contract of 2 years.
Okay.
So you have the option to, as long as you're on good terms with your
so don't mess up, basically.
Right, so which most people are going to be good, but as long as you're on good terms with your establishments, things like that, you have the option to renew for a second term, for a second year.
So with the classes, how many classes do you teach a week? Is it random or?
It depends on your schools. I hate to say that, but it really depends on what schools you're in. In general, our contract is for about 12 hours a week, which is not a lot when you think about it, but not huge, so it's very manageable.
But that's 12 classes. So
Potentially. So the way that it works for me, for example, so when you're doing this program and you have your placements, you could be placed in one school, in 2 schools. Some of my friends are just in 1 school, and some of us are in 2 schools, for example.
Oh, okay.
So you have 12 hours a week, and for me, it's split between 2 different schools. 6 hours in each school. So I'm in one of my middle schools twice a week, and I'm there teaching about maybe 3 classes for each one of those days. So it's kind of like a shorter, easier day on those 2 days. And then my other school that I'm at, I'm only there 1 time a week. So I'm teaching for maybe 5-6 hours a day for that day. So, 5-6 classes. But it really just depends on the week. For the most part, I'm there the same days every single week. Some people, it changes every week.
Right.
And of course, it depends on my teachers' schedules and whether or not they've had time to do everything with their pupils. If their pupils are ready to have me in class that week, if they've prepared everything that they've needed to for me to be there.
I just want to know, like, how do you find it? Is it hard?
Teaching the kids? Yeah.
Is it hard? Okay, so there's kind of like multiple factors that I would say honestly like plays into my response to that question. One of them is like, I'm really fortunate, I'm really grateful that I do have prior teaching experience. I have like certification to teach.
Okay.
So that's been really nice, is that I've been able to take that experience, that knowledge that I have and use that in the classroom.
Okay.
Versus some of my friends who are basically teaching for the first time right now. And they're discovering right now that maybe they don't like it at all, or maybe they do like it. But for me, it's something that I've had exposure to, so I'm comfortable already.
Okay.
Another thing that kind of plays into this question is your French background. So like for the most part, like while I am teaching English classes, the levels of English are really all over the place.
Right.
Even within a class, it could be someone who is, English is already their 3rd language.
Right.
They have an English teacher parent, or someone who's barely getting by.
Right.
So I would say like prior teaching experience really plays into it, and it makes it easier for me. But also having French experience means that I can
help the struggling students.
Yeah, I can kind of supplement when I need to.
Well, that kind of concludes the section where we talk about teaching English in France. Thank you, Jacob, for your wonderful insight.
You're so welcome.
And we're going to move on to the part where we talk a little bit about what's it like living in France. And for you as well, Sarah. Did you have any French culture shock?
French culture shocks. Yes. I'll say one of the biggest shocks,
here we go,
or things to sort of like adjust to, was actually something that I ran into today.
Yep.
The French love to strike. They have fought long and hard for their rights to grève.
Grève, strike.
Yep, they've fought long and hard for their right to strike, and that's good. Good for them. But that is something good for them. For example, when like today, when the public transportation systems all went on strike, and sometimes you have somewhere to be, so you sort of have to like roll with the punches. I would say the French administrative system is infamous, is very infamous, is very well known for being a challenge. I would say it's a challenging system.
He's being polite.
Sometimes it's very challenging.
Exactly. And what about you, Sarah? Have you had any culture
shocks? What were your culture shocks coming to this country?
Wow. Well, me,
that could be a whole video, right?
I'm sure it could be.
It's been a long time. I'm here. I forgot about the culture shock.
True. The ticket resto, the fact that like you get given like restaurant tickets and stuff like this.
That's cool.
And there's so many rules around it. Like you can only use X amount per day. You can't use it on Sundays. When it's your birthday in France, you're the one buying the cakes and stuff for other people.
No, what?
Yeah. If it's your birthday, you're the one bringing in the croissants and stuff to work. Whereas, like, in Australia, if it's your birthday, you're not paying for anything. Everyone else is gonna pay
same
for
for the States.
It's like in Morocco, if you're a foreign person, like, people are gonna be welcoming you.
Yeah.
And here in France, it's not the case. If you're, like, new and you're foreign, you have to, like, go to people, talk to people.
Yeah.
And otherwise, they're not coming to you.
And that's true.
And that's it. And I don't know, in America, is it the same? Like,
I understand what you're saying. Like, it's kind of like on you to make the effort and to like make the first. Because I feel like in the States, like we're notoriously viewed as being like terminally happy, and like everyone is smiley and super like friendly and welcoming. People kind of go out of their way to make you feel welcome. Versus here in France, it's on you to make the effort to sort of integrate a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
And I didn't get this at first.
Is it expensive living in France? Obviously, it depends, like, which city. Like, Paris is different, but...
Yeah, so...
Is that the same as America, or...
Actually, I could say, like, a lot of things about that. So, like, yeah, like, it really does depend on your income, where you're at, stuff like that. What I will say, what is really nice about France is that that's sort of different from the United States that I've experienced, is that they have so many programs and benefits to sort of help people.
Yeah, like healthcare,
La CAF, for example, like to get housing, to get aid, basically.
Yeah.
Like on just your rent, for example. Like that's like a really wonderful thing that I've had access to. Another really great thing is that even just like strictly by age, you have a lot of things that are a little bit more affordable. They're less expensive if you fall into a certain age range, like being under 26.
26, yeah.
I qualify for like reduced ticket prices, reduced entry fees, like all sorts of things like that.
And the last question is, do you get homesick?
I mean, like obviously I get homesick for the people who are important to me, my friends and my family, stuff like that. Sometimes, honestly though, I do miss either like American conveniences or the American things that I'm used to, because you know, like you're used to it. Just in terms of like quality of life, for example, like I think it's like much better here versus some of the things that I've dealt with in the US. But of course, at the end of the day, you know, there's always things that I'm always going to be homesick for. Going to a baseball game with my friends, like I'm from Cleveland, so like going to things that are really famous in Cleveland.
And I know you get homesick, don't you?
Of course, you miss your people, your family, the food.
I do
miss the food.
Yeah, you have great food.
But I have the chance that I'm close. Like it's 2 hours flight.
It's not that far compared to Australia and America. Like
yeah, a little bit more.
Rip the bank account.
Yeah, rip that bank account when I book that ticket. Yeah. But for the most part, I also feel very like fortunate and like grateful for the opportunity. And like,
for sure. Being in Europe is so good. Like being able to travel everywhere and
travel
for an Australian or an American, like. It's pretty damn good. So that wraps up the video about teaching English in France. Thank you again, Jacob, for all of your insights. Thank you, Sarah, for being there. You're such good emotional support. And I'll put both of their Instagrams in the description or on the screen. So check them out if you want to.
Give us a follow.
And otherwise, see you in the next video.
See you soon.
See you.
Bye.